Happy New Year. Oh, such emotional times. I can't even get into it because I'm just going to cry because it's been a tough 24 hours. And I'm glad that we're all here together. And I'm glad that we have Tracy and Jen here to lead us in this step bravely into 2021. And that really resonates a lot today. And we're just honored, we have this award-winning broadcast journalist with us tonight, Tracy Davidson. Tracy and I and Unite for Her, we've been connecting for a couple of years now, and we're so grateful to have you as a part of the Unite for Her community. And then I got to meet Jen, who is this wonderful TED speaker and inspirational speaker. And together they have this Lifting Your Voice segment that we started hearing more and more about. I'm like, well, what are you guys doing? I want to know about this. And of course, in their fashion, to get back to the community, they allow our women to actually come to these events that they have, motivational speaking events that they have. And it's probably like quarterly. Is that right, Tracy and Jen? You're doing them about quarterly or
twice a year?
Twice a year. Okay, twice a year. So that's been really neat to be able to watch that evolve. And thank you for coming. So big turnout tonight, and we are happy to have you. Hi there, Marilyn. Good to have you. We're just going to ask you to keep your microphones on mute so that way, we can hear our speakers as we start our event. All right, so I am going to replace my spotlight with Tracy. Hi there, Tracy. And we're going to add Jen. There you go.
Here we go.
Beautiful. So everybody, hopefully you are on your speaker view. You can see everyone. You see Jen and Tracy front and center. Everybody with me? Thumbs up. All right, utilize the chat. I'll be watching it for you, Tracy and Jen. If you need me to do anything, just shout it out, okay? I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, I like this.
Good. I like it too. You guys look great. Awesome.
Perfect.
So I just want to give everybody a huge hug. This is and we're so happy to be with you tonight.
We are.
And perfect timing. And I think that we continue to look forward. I've heard, we covered so much today in the news, and everybody said, oh, we had such high hopes for 2021. And I say, we still have high hopes for 2021, right? We can look forward to a lot of things. And I think, I don't know if you heard a lot of jokes at the end of 2020, Jen, I know that you did, and I'm sure that you all did, get rid of 2020, so long, see you later. But I think there are some things from 2020 that we can take with us into the new year, into 2021. I mean, to borrow a phrase from my yoga friends, we can take with us what serves us. And I think there were a lot of things that served us well in 2020 as we faced all the challenges. We learned that a lot of things are out of our control, but we can shift our attention and realize there are things that are in our control, right? I think that we all grew our resilience and our creative problem solving, like who did some plumbing or technology they never thought they'd have to do, right? We figured out things and we were really creative in how we solved our problems. And I think we knew this, but I think we got a huge reminder that we need each other. Even if this is virtual, I can feel you all, we all need this. We need to be with one another. And Jen lives that, and that's why Jen and I started the Lifting Your Voice, because we believe that women get it and that women need to be together and that we can lift each other up. And so our most recent Lifting Your Voice is entitled Brave. Jen, tell them about Brave.
So first of all, number one, I'm really glad that we're here tonight. Glad that we're able to have this space together and to take this minute together as we step into this idea of brave. We didn't know how relevant it would be. And I have to say, if you would all do me a favor right now and just wherever you are, just take a nice deep breath. And just let it out slowly. Sometimes that's all it takes to hit that reset button to begin again. And we can do that anytime. And so I think what I've noticed, if 2020 has taught us anything, it's really to be able to be okay with all the feelings. It's to be able to, we don't have to be optimistic all the time. Life isn't, everything's great. Don't worry about me. I think what it taught us is that it's okay to feel it all. And it's okay to just sit in it when we need to. And I think we gave each other a little bit more permission to do that. And so as we step into this idea of brave, which we're going to share with you here in a second, I think what I want you to go into this with is, this is your time to decide. I think we can make a choice. In chaos comes opportunity. And I think this is your time to decide, every single one of us, what that's going to look like. There's so much we can't control. Every single one of you here know there's so much we can't control. But what are the things we can? And so we're going to focus on that. We're going to talk about how we can move through this idea of showing up as your brave self. And so brave stands for belonging, resilience, authenticity, vulnerability, and exhale. Right? That's where we are. So I think if we really start with belonging and we start to dive in a little bit to understanding what belonging is really about. I wrote this thing, and I want to share this with you real quick, for an event that I'm doing for a hospital. And I equated the idea of belonging. I've been studying a lot of inclusion and diversity, and understanding belonging is kind of that next piece. And so I wrote this: diversity is being invited into the room. Equity is having the same level of access to the room as everyone else. Inclusion is having a seat at the table. And belonging is having a voice that is heard and listened to by others who sit at that very table with you. Belonging is not about fitting in, because fitting in, you have to actually change yourself to be a part of the group.
That's an interesting concept that you and I have talked about a lot, that you think fitting in is like, oh, well, we all want to fit in, and that's how you do it. But fitting in means that we change ourselves.
Right.
So that we look like, we are like, we act like the group.
And really belonging is kind of the opposite of that, right?
Right.
It's everything about you actually being you, showing up as you, as yourself, as your authentic self, which we're going to get there. But I think if you look at belonging from a standpoint of understanding where we sit today, because we could talk about all kinds of reasons why we often, and I'm sure every single person here can say at some point in your life you felt like you didn't belong somewhere. And we all have that. That's kind of human, right? That's the human nature of all of us. But I think really understanding belonging at that level is understanding what it looks like when you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think, we talk about, it's not odd, I guess. It's no mistake that belonging and love is at the center of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's not by accident. This is a human need. This is something that we need to have in order to live a full life. I know that, looking at some of the ideas of belonging, I mean, I can go through a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm not going to do that tonight, but I want to touch on one thing. There's a real issue that we've been dealing with for a while now, and it's only gotten worse as we've gone into the past couple of years, and especially this year. And that's the idea of loneliness. Loneliness is being seen as an epidemic by psychologists around the globe today. And there's all kinds of stats and there's all kinds of research. But what I want you to really understand is that loneliness isn't about having people around you. Because I'm sure if you're like me, You've walked into a room, there's 50 people, and you feel completely alone. Anyone ever feel that way? Right? So you know what that feels like. That's loneliness. That's internal. It's not about having someone by your side or how many people are next to you or being in a group of people or in a crowd. It's about what's going on for you inside.
And it's about not, alone and lonely are two different things.
That's right.
You can feel very full and very connected even when you are alone. But loneliness, just like you were talking about, Jen, you can feel in a crowd.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the connection.
That's right. So it comes down to connection. So we wanted to do a little ask of you, and we're going to use the chat because I think that'll be the easiest way to do this. And if you would put in the chat your answer, then we can kind of see them as they pop up. But the question really is, what have you done when you felt that loneliness? What's something that you've done to be able to kind of move out of that? Is there a specific thing or somebody you call or something that you do or an activity? What is it for you? Because we're interested in hearing a little bit about, what you do. And we think, obviously that'll help somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that, again, I'm looking at what we can take from 2020. What we've learned is that, number one, we are talking a lot more about the feeling of lonely, right? Because loneliness, the problem, it's a health crisis and it's existed for a while now. But I think 2020 gave us permission to start talking about it. And, I spend my time, even though this is what I do, talking to people about digital distraction, right? That's not connection. But what had to happen in 2020 is that we had to intentionally say, I'm feeling not connected to whoever. I need to intentionally connect via some technology so that I can find that belonging, find that human connection to ease my loneliness. Because look, I'm an introvert, so I like alone. Alone fills me up, but nobody likes to feel lonely.
That's right. And I'll tell you, in reading, they're flying in here, but in reading some of these, do something that makes me feel good, remind myself of all my blessings. I saw a few of those. Pray, get out in nature, do something I enjoy doing. What I see a lot of is reaching out to somebody, talking to somebody, read a book, exercise, knit, do breathing exercises, do something good for someone else, listen to music.
You guys have this all down because doing something good for somebody else, that's like a high. That literally it happens in your brain. That gives you a natural high. So
and I think this is my favorite because this is what I do: hug the dog. Always. But I mean, look at these. These aren't way out there. These aren't things that we can't do. So what I'm going to tell you is, here's your opportunity to come up with a list of ideas. And I think that you can actually save the chat, correct? There's a button down. We'll tell you how to do that at the end. But or maybe Sue, you could kind of capture it.
Yep, I'll capture it.
I think this is gold.
We can capture it.
This is gold right here. When you're feeling it and you're, what can I do? There's nobody to talk to right now. What else can I do? Look at this. I mean, there's some fantastic ideas here, things that you can actually do to get beyond that feeling. So that's powerful. So let's move to R.
To R, which is one of my favorite topics, as you know, Jen, resilience.
I study it too.
I study it, so call me crazy. Well, I go back to the beginning of this pandemic, and neurobiologically, we're really not wired to be able to understand the pandemic. I mean, we can do the fight or flight, but that's when there's like a flood or a fire or something like, then our adrenaline kicks in and we're like, okay, right? We can do the executive thinking, give us all the information, our prefrontal cortex, we'll figure it out. But this has lasted for a long time. This wasn't just like an immediate crisis. And we weren't being given all the information. So we're like, whoa, there's so many unknowns. And there are still so many unknowns 10 months in, 11 months in. And so what we do, what our brains do when we don't have information, is we fill that space with our thoughts and with our feelings. And
Always
that's
tell
when,
stories, don't we?
what?
We
Oh,
make
we
up
tell stories like there is nobody's business.
Oh, absolutely.
Stories to, stories to ourselves.
Yep.
And that just tells us that what we put in that space, that we don't have any information, the stories, the things we tell ourselves, the voices. I one time said when I was giving a speech, those voices in your head, and everybody just looked at me. I'm like, come on, you all have those voices, don't you? I am not the only one who has somebody talking to me in my head.
Uh-huh.
But now it's more important than ever to really be aware of those thoughts and those emotions that we put in that space, and those voices and what they're saying. And that's really where resilience comes in. It's not a trait that you're born with or not. It's not static, because I can guarantee you that you grew your resilience over this period of time. It's a set of skills that can be grown, that can be stretched, that can be developed. And while I know we can bemoan, and rightly so, all the things that were taken from us, all the events that didn't happen, all the people who were taken from us, all the time that was taken from us, all the events that were taken from us, all the jobs that were taken from us, what we still have and what we still have control over is how we think and how we feel, and what are those choices that we choose to put in to the rest of the story that we are going to tell ourselves. So resilience is all about sort of developing those skills, and I always call it a space. It's a space between something happening and then our thoughts and our emotions, and then how we decide to respond to that sort of trigger. And
Can
so
I say something to that real quick, Trace?
Yeah.
What's really interesting too is when you just said it's not static. When I talk about resilience, I talk about the idea of flow, and flow is in the psychological world, but talking about that idea of being, you might have heard it called being in the zone. Or you hear, an athlete, they were in the zone. It's, you have no sense of time or anything else that's going on around you. You are so in it. You are so present that you're in that zone of whatever it is that you're doing. And when I look at resilience, I think about, you're right, it's not static. It's all the stuff in between. I call it flow amidst chaos. And if you think about when things are happening, what are the little things in between? What are the breaths that you're taking to get from point A to point B? How are you standing back up again, even if it's hard? In that moment, in the action of standing up, figuratively or not, that is resilience. That's the flow.
I think not being static is that sometimes you have the ability to very clearly see what's happening, stop, take the breath, right? Take the breath. What's happening? What are my emotions? What are my thoughts? What are my actions going to be? All within a span of 2 seconds. I think when we're taking care of ourselves, when we're nutritionally supporting ourselves, emotionally supporting ourselves, getting enough sleep, all of that, that's when we can do it all quickly without even thinking, right? Because we've been practicing. How are we going to analyze that thought and then decide how we're going to respond? But sometimes when we haven't taken real good care, we can skip right to the emotion and forget that whatever is coming out of our mouth or about to come out of our mouth might not serve us the best, right? So we can continue to grow our skills and then still have ups and downs in terms of how we deal with challenges that come our way. So resilience, we're talking about skills, and see if any of these ring a bell, because again, I think we've all had sort of a master class in resilience over the last year.
For sure.
So resilience involves the ability to pivot. That's like the word of 2020, right? Yep. We've used it so much, but resilience doesn't necessarily mean, I've heard a lot of people say resilience is like grit, like you're digging in, like no matter what. Well, no, resilience doesn't mean keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Right. Resilience means, try to work at something, but then when you got to pivot, you got to pivot. And that involves having a really clear picture of whatever the challenge is that you're facing. And these can be big ones or little ones, right? Like, what's the clear picture? not Pollyanna, but say clear picture, and I believe things will be okay. Like, and I have an ability to think that things are going to be okay. I perhaps have the ability to actually be effective in making things be okay. But I'm going to see the challenge really clearly and see what's causing that, right? Also, it's creative problem solving, which again, we've all been doing so well. And another gift from 2020 is that, I don't know about all of you, but for me at work, there's nothing worse than somebody saying, oh, you know how we could solve this problem? Let's do A, B, or C. And then to have somebody at the table go, no, we've already done A, B, and C. That doesn't work. But you couldn't say that in 2020, and you can't say that in 2021 because we've never been here before.
That's right.
So all solutions are on the table. All possibilities are on the table. You know, when we look back on this time, and though we will acknowledge, see, this is seeing the picture clearly, although we will acknowledge that, you know, there are some businesses some business owners who lost their businesses. There are some businesses who are losing a lot of business. We will also look back and see that there were people who lost their jobs and they had nothing to lose. So they're like, I'm going to try to do this. And they're doing it.
Yeah.
And so.
And they never would have, right? I mean, we know how that works. Sometimes the universe has to give you a push to make you go do something that you weren't ready to do, or so you thought. For sure.
So resilience is all about your perspective, your thoughts, and your emotions, all which, going back to what you said earlier, Jen, you have a choice, right? For all the things, Jen and I quote Viktor Frankl all the time, for all the things that can be taken away from us. And boy, we've had a lot of things taken away from us. And I know you all have. Mm-hmm. For all the things taken away from us, here's what no one can take away from us. No one can take away our ability to choose our thoughts, to process our emotions. We have that ability to choose. And I think 2020 and now going into 2021 gives us a great opportunity to choose the thoughts that we want, to process the emotions, to be curious about our emotions. Early on, Jen and I both follow Glennon Doyle. And, you know, early on, everybody was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to make homemade peanut butter. I'm going to learn how to talk Mandarin. And she went on, she's like, look, I get credit for getting out of bed. This is hard.
That's right.
This is hard. And so when
that's okay.
And that's okay, right? And hey, excellent. You got out of bed. I think that we too often, maybe we are curious about our feelings, right? But then almost instantly we judge ourselves, right, Jen? Are you a judger? I'm a judger.
Always.
You gotta, and you have to sort of pull back from that and not be an emotional judge, but be an emotional scientist. So be curious, like, what's that feeling that I'm really feeling? Not just, oh, I'm stressed. You know, do it for yourself. Huh, really? Am I stressed? What does that even mean? Like, what is in my craw? Like, be curious without beating yourself up. Because look, this is hard. It's all hard. What you're living is hard. What a lot of people are living is hard. So you get to go, what am I feeling? It's okay. But the more you can get down to like granularly, what's it from? Then you can start to process and choose some thoughts around it. Right, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what happens with that too, and making those choices, it really gets to the core of who you are, right? I mean, if you really look at it from a standpoint of, okay, these are my feelings. This is how I am processing these feelings. That makes up me. That is all a part of who I am. And so
it gets to your values, right? I mean, because if something happens and you're irritated, once you go, but why? Oh, it's an affront to my values. It's an affront to how I believe I should be living or how the world should be, right?
That's right. And so I like to look at this, and this is a perfect segue right into our A, which is authenticity. And I want you to think for a moment about, what are the first three things you say? If someone says, and let's use the chat. Let's do this real quick. I'm going to ask you, and I want you to, the first three things that would come out of your mouth if we were just meeting for the first time, and I say to you, hi, I'm Jen. And you say, hi, I'm Erica. And I say, tell me about yourself. What are the first three things you say? Go ahead and put them in the chat. Because I want us to get really clear on something for a second. Okay. So I'm a professor and I love it. That's great. What else? What do you say? How do you introduce yourself? I'm a teacher, musician, teacher, cat mom. Love it. That's great. Amazing family with 6 siblings. Cool. I'm a mom of 2 beautiful children, retired mother volunteer. Love Prince. A mom and mom to laugh. Well, you made us laugh. Thank you. Musician, mom, Nana. Okay. So do you see all of these things? We can go through this over and over, but here's what we're going to see. We're going to see all of these things that we wrote down. I'm going to ask you to kind of check yourself for a second. Is that who you are, or is that what you are? Because if you're looking at these things, a lot of this stuff, these are the things that describe you to everyone else. Let that sink in for a minute. When I say, who are you? And you look at, these are my labels. These are the roles you play to everyone else in your life. But when we ask the question, really now, who are you? Without anyone else, that gets really hard to answer, right? Because it takes away those identities that we live through. And when we take those away for a second and we say, who am I at the core? Now we're talking about values, and we're talking about, my morals, my ethics, my beliefs, the things that I will not compromise for anyone. We call them your personal non-negotiables. And those non-negotiables, you'll notice over time, don't really change. You kind of, you live some out, and you start to really be steadfast in whether it's faith or it's integrity or it's truth or it's whatever it is for you. And you could have a few, but there's always at least one that is your true north. That's when we talk about authenticity, that's what it's about.
And don't you think too that sometimes it takes, questioning yourself, the why, and then you all of a sudden figure out, here are your truths, and some event or some person is like rubbing against it. Yeah. Right? It's just not getting through. And you're like, what? Oh, because this is not me.
That's right.
This is not who I want to be. This is not who I choose to be. This is not my values.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes we have to remove those barriers. And sometimes those barriers are people. Let me say that again. Sometimes those barriers are people. And I know that for so many of us, that is one of the most uncomfortable things to think about. They could be family, they could be friends, they could be partners, spouses. It doesn't matter. The point is, when those things get uncomfortable to a point of understanding that I am now compromising my authentic self, that's not going to work.
It's just about the fears that get in the way too.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. Think about times when you've shown up as your true authentic self, and then think about times when you haven't, right? What stops you? What gets in the way? What's the fear that stops you from showing up? So I'm going to ask you, put that in the chat. What's the fear for you? What's the thing that gives you pause, that makes you maybe not be as authentic as you possibly could sometimes? Fear of rejection, that's huge, right? Ridicule.
People judging. I'm all in.
Judgment.
Yep.
Yeah, we live this, right? This is absolutely what it's about. Notice they're all the same, right? Judgment, rejection, worrying that you're going to hurt someone else, how people are thinking about you, fear of not getting it right, but like right to whom, right? You see what I mean? So it's all the same stuff. These are all the same fears. These all go back to talking about belonging, don't they? This is all about the difference between fitting in, because all of this is needing to fit in. It needs to fit other people's constructs of who you should be to them. I hope you're hearing that clearly, because that's big. These things hold us back. But when we're really understanding belonging, that we can show up and belong where we are, we actually can be our authentic selves without fear of anything. We are truly living fully.
When I hear you talk about that, I think about when I used to teach public speaking, and I used to say, we talked about authenticity a lot, and of course nobody wants to be fake. Everybody wants to be authentic. But when you get up in your public speaking, you have the new dress on, right? And the new heels, and you're in a new place. And because of all those fears and all those new things that you're like, oh, I don't know, does this look good? Oh, but so as soon as you get out of being completely you, that's when you lose the connection with the people that you're trying to talk to. That's because right. You wanted to be so layered up. Oh, this suit's going to look so good. Oh, these heels are going to look so good, until they're like, oh my God, these are killing me.
These are awful.
Right. And all of that gets in the way. Oh, I became a Toastmaster to get over my fear of speaking in public. Yeah. So all of that is just layers and layers. And I also think of something that I once said to my priest. I said, you know, he's like, you look different in church. And I said, because I like to come to church naked. That's he's right. Like, what? But it's what you were saying, like being completely like, take off the layers, it's hard, back to our word brave. It's hard to deal with the fear, right?
Yeah. Why is it hard though? Because we don't want to be what? We don't want to be vulnerable. Right? There's our V.
There's our V, vulnerability.
Look at that.
But again, but here again, see, again, I'm not Pollyanna, but I'm looking for the gifts, and I do fully believe we are giving gifts in 2020. I think that 2020 gave us the permission to be vulnerable, because we all walk around like, oh, everything's okay. Even if we're facing a challenge, we're like, oh, I'm strong. I have family support. But 2020 gave us an extra added permission slip to go, I'm not okay today. That's right. And now people are more able to talk about being lonely, being not okay. And I think that for a long time, people believed, because again, we're so worried about fitting in, what other people think, instead of just being me. And if you want to be with me, then glorious. And if not, I'm still going to be me. That's so, right. Exactly. So that's so how we have to work. But I think that we've gone through life putting on this facade. I mean, it's not negative. It's just like this armor, right? We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to show people our vulnerability. Yet there are tons of studies. Jen and I both look at all kinds of research on all of this. Tons of studies that show, even though we think, if I walked to my friend and told my friend I was, struggling today, or if you called somebody else in this group and said, I know I should be fine. I know I should be feeling good today, but I'm just feeling horrible. Like, you think, you're already projecting that somebody else is going to think less of you. Oh, well, they're not very strong, or they don't have it all together. I had a call from a girlfriend the other day. She just lost it as soon as I picked up the phone. I'm like, okay, yep. let's get to it. That's what connection is all about. But the studies say that even though we walk through life thinking that if we show our vulnerability, our deepest, darkest corners of our souls to somebody else, they will think less of us. All of the research, all of it, says people will think more of you because you showed them, back to authenticity, your authentic self, because you were vulnerable. and it is scary, but that's the way we get these very special connections with one another.
That's right. The thing that was really interesting when I was studying this that I found, and I can't do it properly because I only have one arm tonight.
Oh, I was going to bring that up for anybody who doesn't know. Would you explain your sling, please?
I had shoulder surgery 3 weeks ago, so I'm still in a sling. I'm not in a seatbelt. I was on a call. I swear, I can't make this up. Just yesterday. And
why are you wearing your seatbelt?
You thought I was in a seatbelt, and I was like in my office chair. That's okay. This is not a seatbelt, folks. It's a sling. Okay. Anyway, so the interesting thing that I found was in American Sign Language, vulnerability is when you do this, and it means literally weaken the knees, right? And you put that on your hand and you do that. What's so cool is that the second way to say vulnerable in sign language is taking both of your hands and going like this, like bearing your chest. And that makes me think, thank you, Tracy. That makes me think of like Superman, right? Showing his S. That kind of vulnerability, that is real strength. Letting people see who you are at the core. That's powerful. I want to share a quick story as to vulnerability. I was speaking, and I'll kind of condense this real quick. I was speaking up in nowhere, New York State, like the middle of nowhere, literally. I don't even remember where it was. It was a tiny little town. But it was really interesting that there was this huge tire distributor. It was the largest tire distributor in the state of New York. And they had called me, the owner called me. He said, hey, I want you to come up, speak to all of my distribution center managers. So there was 36 of them. Okay, great. No problem. So I go up and I spend the night. I come in the next morning. He said, I want you to just come in the back. And as soon as I'm done, I'll call you up because I'm doing the, intro part, the beginning. That's fine. So I get my coffee. I get in there a little early. I come in the back and all I see are the backs of heads, right? Because I'm coming in the back door. It is a big horseshoe of 36 middle-aged or older white men. And I was like, huh. You picked me. Okay.
That happened.
Right. So here was my judgment, right? Here was why would you pick me to talk to a whole room of like older white men who are, in the tire business? Okay. So I had two choices that day. I could choose to really give everything I have and try to make a difference, or I could choose, hey, they already paid me, go do my thing. Well, that's not me. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna really go in here and see what I can do to help and to maybe change one person in this room. So I went up, I had 90 minutes, I finished my thing. And at the very end, I had them do the exercise that I call your confidence resume. And in the handout they had, it was numbered 1 to 10 on the piece of paper. And I literally just said, just write down your strengths. I'm going to give you 1 minute. Go ahead and do it. 1 minute's over. And I decide I'm going to walk around the inside of the horseshoe and have each person read one. I said, so just give us one. Great. So I started the owner and I'm halfway through. They're shouting out. They're all, feeling good about it. And I get halfway through and I get to clearly the youngest guy in the room. And as I'm at the person before, I looked down, I could see his paper. It was completely blank. And I was like, oh, this guy's too cool for school, right? You didn't want to write anything down. Like, okay. Again, there's the prejudgment. So I'm catching myself doing this. And I was like, all right, well, let's see what happens. So I get to him and he had his head down and I said, okay, go ahead, give us one. And he looked up at me and his eyes were full of tears and he just started to cry. And I said, okay, wait, we're going to stop right here. And I asked everyone in the room, and I looked at him and he said, I'm struggling to find one. I asked everyone in the room, I said, you know this guy, right? They said, yeah. Okay, go ahead and help him fill this out. So they just started shouting out all these wonderful things about this guy. And literally, as I'm looking around, I'm watching them get emotional about this process. And when he was done, he wrote them all down, everything was fine. We finish, I leave. And I had the feedback forms that I usually give out. And when I got home, I found his. And it literally said, thank you, thank you, thank you. You helped me find strengths I never knew I had. He said, I'm going through a really bad divorce right now. And my wife sure doesn't think that I have any of these. We have no idea what anyone's going through. We don't know anyone else's story. We can go in and make a decision that this is the way it is without having all the information. Or we can give these opportunities for someone to be vulnerable and share their story. That day changed me as much as I think it changed everyone in that room. And so understanding when we share our story and we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, I think it is so critically important to pause and to give others the permission to do the same. That's really powerful.
I like the chat that just popped up, when somebody used to say, "Hi, how are you?" You say, "Okay."
Mm.
No matter what, I always think that's kind of rude to other people. I mean, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe there's just a greeting, right? But I always sort of stop and take the opportunity to say, I'm really, really well today. Or today, I was really honest. Like, I'm still a little like shell shocked from yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, and then you get the opportunity to actually have a conversation. Fine, feelings I'm not expressing. Yeah.
Yeah, we all do it. And it's really interesting. Think about the dynamics of we're walking by someone like in a hallway and we say, "Hi, how are you?" And they say, "Great, how are you?" or whatever, but we just keep going. Like we're not even pausing to actually wait for the answer. It's like, "Hey, how are you?" And you're just gone. Like, do we care?
Well, and I hope, and we'll move into exhale, which we started this hour doing this. Can we do it again?
Right. Exactly.
Inhale.
Everything comes full circle, right?
Everything comes full circle. But the exhale in Brave is about taking the big exhale. Oh, I like it. I like it. The big exhale. And the big, just sort of taking the big picture and being grateful. As we're just saying, it's easy, or it was easy, I think, to walk by someone and go, "Hey, how are you? How are you?" Now, I think we're grateful for what we have and we know what we're missing. So hopefully, as we get things back, we'll be grateful. And that can be a way that we see the world.
That's right.
Through eyes of gratitude, which all goes back to, again, what we choose to focus on.
Yeah.
I always say when something is not going well in my life, I always say, if I'm focused on something that I have absolutely no control over, that is a negative, where do I go? I'm just like stuck, right? There's no place to go from there. I mean, if I want to just let myself feel it and not judge it, but just feel it, that's one thing. But then to just like stay there and stay stuck, I would much rather look for what I'm grateful for. And I think that there's so many things to be grateful for. And, we put exhale as our word because, number one, I think 2020 sort of stopped us all. I had a friend in the first few weeks who said, maybe we all needed this. I mean, I don't think we knew then it was going to last for this long, but maybe we needed to like take this big, deep exhale because we were all running so fast, paying a lot of attention to things that maybe we've learned don't really matter all that much. Right. And letting things get to us that really don't matter all that much, that rob us of our joy, that send our amygdala, woo, I'm just so mad, I'm so whatever.
Yeah.
You go, whoa, wait.
Yeah. What's the point?
Is this something that's important? And exhale for me includes extraception and introception. And what that is, and I do it all around here all the time. If you're having a challenging day, especially if something like has really, like you hang up the phone and you're like, you go, okay. And this can happen. You can do this in 60 seconds. So close your eyes with me. So just take one deep breath in and out. Concentrate on what you're hearing besides my voice. Put your focus to what you feel on your body. Do you feel your chair or your fuzzy socks? Do you have any tastes in your mouth? I saw somebody taking a drink of something. What did that taste like? Now open your eyes and what are you seeing very clearly? And then inside, how are you feeling? How are you feeling physically? Like, is your belly kind of hungry or nice and full because you had something to eat? Maybe for whatever reason, you're feeling sort of drained today. Emotionally, emotion and physical all fits together. Are you feeling really good? Did you do something that makes you're feeling strong right now? Are you feeling just comfortable? Like, I'm going to sleep really well. Once you take 60 seconds to go through what are my outside and what are my insides, then you're like, okay, now that I've looked at all of this, now let me relook at this phone call that just had me ready to scream.
Yep.
It's so much better because the outcome is how you want to be, not for others necessarily, but your best self. How do you want to process whatever just happened? It doesn't take long. And for me, I go back to the resilience thing, and I see that resilience thing as a space that, here we are, not talking about expanding and contracting again. It's a space between something happening and your chosen response. And even though it all happens really in a few seconds, we can really expand that space if we practice going through that, right? All those things that I just did, you could really go through that in 10 seconds and then have a much clearer perception of what just happened. What are your emotions around that? What are your thoughts around that? And then what your response is going to be. And 60-second inside outside. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think hitting that pause button absolutely helps with response. I can tell you, there's a quote that I always go back to that I remember, and I can't remember who it is. But it's the notes between, it's the space between
the notes
that makes the music. Because if it all just was one thing and there was no space, everything would sound the same. So it's having those pauses to let it just be what it is. I think that's what we learned for sure in 2020, is being able to take the pause and be real about where we are and say, no, you know what? I just need a minute. Those
minutes and those inhales and exhales can be everything.
So how about I do a little close, and then we'll just kind of be here for a minute if there's any questions or anything that you want to say. So I want you to, one more time, take that nice deep breath. And if it feels comfortable for you, close your eyes, just settle in for a second. We went through a lot today. I want you to just take some time to just breathe and give yourself the grace of just being for a few minutes before you carry on with the rest of your evening. Let go of the hard, the angst, the stuff that's blocking the good. You are more than your failures and your trials and your stumbles. You are stronger than even your weakest moments. No, you're not perfect, but you are whole. Even through the pieces we find of ourselves we thought we once lost, we can recognize the moments that bent us, but we didn't break. You are exactly where you need to be right here, right now, and today. Today you showed up for you. You made the choice to put you first, and you will do it again and again until it becomes a habit. Take another nice, slow, deep breath. The moments that feel hard, I want you to wrap those in grace. Give them as a gift to yourself. Through each of those moments that you choose grace, you win. Take a nice deep breath. Remember what it felt like today to listen and to speak your truth, even quietly, to be vulnerable and powerful at the same time, and to know you can. Feel your heart as it beats inside your own chest. Feel it letting you know how alive you are right now. Remember what it feels like to use your voice, to say what you want, to show up for you in ways you didn't think possible, to be brave, unapologetically brave. And when you close your eyes to sleep tonight, I want you to remind yourself of all of it, every single good thing, and then do it again tomorrow. You are not alone. We are here, and we will be. And we will see you again sometime soon. Thanks so much for showing up with us. We hear you, and we see you, and we're sending you love today and always.
Love and prayers. So happy to see you all.
Oh, thank you, Tracy and Jen. It was beautiful. I know I needed that, so I thank you.
Well, if there's anything we can do, if there's any thoughts or questions or anything that you need, please reach out. Sue knows how to get a hold of us. Let us know what you need.